Welcome. This session will continue our discussion of the structural frame. Finding the right structure is a central concern of any organization and is more than just lines and boxes on an organizational chart. It's a rational arrangement of roles and relationships that depict a desirable pattern of activities, expectations, and exchanges among employees and external constituents or clients. Although it is a set of arrangements intended to accommodate an organization's needs for standardization, efficiency and clarity, and predictability, structure is not synonymous with bureaucracy, red tape, or rigidity. Organizational structures vary widely and are influenced by historical antecedents, the nature of organizational work, and the external environment. The central issue facing managers and leaders include how to organize work and methods for vertical and lateral coordination. As we continue to work on the structural and other frames, you should take advantage of the background information available online. I'd like to recommend that you review readings, PowerPoints, and YouTube short lectures on both the structural frame and classical theories. You'll need to be familiar with these concepts to analyze case studies assigned in the course. Our discussion today will briefly cover several topics, including structural assumptions, origins of the structural perspective, structural forms and functions, basic structural tensions, vertical and lateral coordination. The structural frame emphasizes the importance of formal roles and relationships. Organizational charts are created to depict formal relationships and official communication patterns used to coordinate activities. Managers allocate responsibilities to participants, in other words, the division of labor, that create rules and regulations and policies to handle routine work, and managers make decisions when exceptions arise. When the structure does not fit the situation, then managers are expected to restructure the organization to ensure its efficiency. I've developed a table that summarizes the structural frame in this slide. Bowman and Deal identify 6 basic assumptions of the structural frame, including 1. Organizations are rational and institutions exist to achieve goals and objectives. 2. Organizations increase efficiency and enhance performance through specialization in appropriate division of labor, rules, and formal authority to control and coordinate work. 3. Suitable forms of coordination and control ensure that diverse efforts of individuals mesh. 4. Organizations work best when rationality prevails over personal agendas and extraneous pressures. 5. Structures must be designed to fit an organization's current circumstances, including its goals, technology, workforce, and environment. 6. Problems arise and performance suffers from structural deficiencies. However, these problems may be remedied by managers through analysis and restructuring. Although we discussed classical theories previously, I want to reiterate their contributions to the origins of the structural perspective. The structural perspective was influenced by several industrial analysts who designed organizations for maximum efficiency. Frederick Taylor, recognized as the father of time and motion studies, emphasized efficiency and was the founder of scientific management. Other theorists contributed to the scientific management approach, including Fayol and Erwick and Gulick, who developed key organizational concepts including specialization, span of control, authority, and the delegation of responsibility. Max Weber, a German economist and sociologist, developed the notion of an ideal bureaucracy that maximized rationality and outlined its key features, including a fixed division of labor, hierarchy of offices, performance rules, separate personal and official property and rights, personnel selected for technical qualifications, and employment as a primary occupation. During the post-World War II era, Weber's work inspired advances in theory and research made by Blau and Scott, Perot, Thompson, and Lawrence and Lorsch, who examined relationships among the elements of structure, why one configuration was selected over another, and the effects of structure on morale, productivity, and effectiveness. Let's take a brief look at the notions of structural forms and functions. An organization's structure provides a blueprint for expectations and exchanges among internal and external players. The structure may both enhance or constrain what may be accomplished, and in this regard, alternative design options are almost infinite. The basic principle that form follows function underscores the notion that an organization's design needs to fit its circumstances. Levitt argues that loose structures are preferred as workers need more choices in how they do their work. Mueller counters that tight structures may also produce high morale. However, the work of Adler and Borries proved insightful. They discovered that if structural rigidity enabled people to be more productive, then workers may be energized and satisfied, as is the case at BMW. Scholars concur that pressures of globalization, competition, technology, customer expectations, and workforce dynamics have rendered old structures obsolete and stimulated a resurgence of interest in organizational design, particularly as it relates to productivity. Organizations have several basic structural tensions. It's critical to the success of any organization to determine who does what, when, and how work is accomplished. Thus, the notion of structural design involves two basic issues: differentiation and integration. Differentiation focuses on how work is allocated using a division of labor, specialization of roles, and units. Although formal constraints such as job descriptions, procedures, rules, regulations, policies, and procedures may lead to apathy, absenteeism, and resistance, they also ensure predictability, uniformity, and reliability. Integration, on the other hand, focuses on how work is coordinated across roles and different work units. This may be accomplished using several criteria, including functional groups based on knowledge or skill, time, such as shifts, products, customers or clients, place, such as geography, and processes, such as location in the workflow. Organizations use vertical and lateral coordination to avoid problems such as sub-optimization. Sub-optimization occurs when units focus on accomplishing their own goals and lose sight of the overall mission of the organization. In other words, they lose the big picture. Successful organizations use both vertical and lateral coordination of work to ensure that organization-wide goals are accomplished. Vertical coordination is the most ubiquitous form of integration, in which higher levels coordinate and control the work of subordinates through authority, rules, policy, planning, and control systems. Authorities make decisions. Rules and policies guide routine work, and long-term planning and control systems focus on performance control. Lateral coordination is a form of integration that is less formalized and more flexible than vertical coordination. Work is coordinated horizontally through formal and informal meetings, task forces, coordinating roles, matrix structures, and networks. Here are several strengths and weaknesses of vertical and lateral coordination mechanisms. This slide provides a summary of basic structural options for coordinating work. Managers have a set of options for dividing and coordinating work that are aligned with the desired ends, nature of the environment, characteristics of the workforce, and resources such as budgets. They use a blend of both vertical and lateral coordination methods. Bowman and Deal describe McDonald's and Harvard as a structural odd couple to illustrate the need for structures to align with the nature of work and the environment. McDonald's is focused on production and profit. It has clearer goals, more centralized and tighter performance controls. Harvard, on the other hand, is focused on knowledge work and has diffuse goals, highly decentralized structures, and requires a high level of autonomy for professors. Here's a quick question. Why have two successful organizations developed such different structures? Now, think about your organization's structure. Does it match the nature of work and the environment? If not, what do you need to do? I've developed a summary of structural imperatives that may serve as a quick reference for you. Now let's briefly discuss each of these dimensions in some detail. Size and age. Size matters. It affects the shape and character of its formal structures. The larger the organization, the more likely that a formal hierarchy will be needed to coordinate work. In addition, complexity increases with size and age. Core technology. What an organization does influences how it is organized or how it should be organized. This is independent of size. In an industrial sense, what an organization does to raw materials in order to produce a product will determine its structure. Three components are involved: raw materials, technical activities to transform raw materials, and beliefs about how raw materials are transformed into products or outcomes. Environment. The external environment has a significant influence on the structure of organizations. The external environment provides raw materials, such as students, to schools, and it produces literate and numerate citizens. The boundary between the organization and the environment is permeable. For example, schools have constituencies, parents. Interest groups influence education policies and decisions, and the logic of confidence inhibits altering structures. In other words, public perceptions of what school is prevented the continuation of ungraded primary schools and the elimination of report cards in Kentucky. Organizations vary in the degree to which they are influenced by the external environment. In other words, public schools are influenced more by citizens than are private corporations. The greater the environmental turbulence or uncertainty, the greater the need for flexibility and adaptation to change the structure. Popular wisdom of educational reform is to tighten up in terms of accountability and re-centralization, rather than rethink how we educate children, including how we restructure schools to enhance learning. Although we need more sophisticated next-generation school structures, it is apparent that we're still driving a 1929 Ford. Strategy and goals. Strategic decisions are related to the mission of the organization, are future-oriented, and its goals are embedded. Talcott Parsons said that organizations are created to accomplish goals and that we create structures that enable us to do work. Because we create organizational structures, we can also recreate them when the circumstances change. Goals may be specific. In other words, corporations are all about making money, or they can be ambiguous. For example, it's harder to reach agreement on what schools do when goals are specific. Are they intended to prepare citizens, enable students to get a job, redress past inequities, or keep young people off the labor market? Vague or generally stated goals are preferable as it enables more people to identify and support them. In other words, let's prepare students for success. Who can argue with that? That is politically astute because more specific goals will be challenged. Information technology. Since the mid-1950s, an increase in the availability of information had a profound effect on the nature and direction of organizations and public policy. Technologies have revolutionized the way information is created, how it's shared, and the speed at which it occurs. New technologies like personal computers, the internet, and cell phones have created highly adaptive networks for sharing information. Consequently, these technologies have flattened organizational structures and decreased the levels of management described by Drucker as traditional command and control systems. In addition, it has reduced the size of support staff, increased flexibility, and enhanced decentralization. As we continue to expand the use of information technology, we should expect that these trends will continue. People, the nature of the workforce. The nature of work and the characteristics of the workforce will influence organizational structures and how we manage and lead people. Presently, the match is very poor. Here's a common misperception. We tend to view and treat workers as unskilled labor. For example, we create organizations that divide work into small, routine tasks, provide close supervision, and managers' decisions are top-down. Here's a reality check. Most jobs require skilled labor. People are better educated and demand more discretion in their daily work routines and expect greater autonomy. Knowledge workers, such as teachers, professors, and researchers, resent being told what to do and expect to be supervised by a colleague and have their work judged on a professional basis. My point? The changing nature of the workforce will increase pressure on traditional hierarchical forms of organizations to restructure and rethink how work is accomplished. In sum, there's no one best way to organize. Organization structures depend on its size, goals, environment, strategies, core technology, and its workforce. The job of the manager or leader of an organization is to analyze these structural imperatives and to configure or reconfigure the organizational structure to fit it so that it all works. In conclusion, the structural frame helps understand the social architecture of work, or how we plan and design organizational structures, how we arrange roles and relationships to maximize organizational effort. It's important to note that structure is more than red tape and bureaucracy. Bad structures waste resources, frustrate individuals, and undermine effectiveness. On the other hand, good structures empower individuals and units to work together and achieve goals. In addition, differentiation and integration present central structural challenges. How do we divide work? And how do we coordinate it once we divide it? Finally, the design of organizational structures depends on the situation. Simpler, more stable environments require simple, hierarchical, and more centralized structures to handle routine work. Changing, turbulent environments require more complex, flexible structures that can enable organizations to adapt and change. On the next slide, I've provided a set of definitions of key terms that you may find useful. Thanks.